Hey guys, my name is Shai and this is Evermind Astro. This video, I'm going to take you through Neptune transiting through all of the houses, okay? Neptune transiting through the houses. This might also resonate for your birth chart, your natal placements, but really I want to focus on the significance and the power of the Neptune transit as Neptune moves through our houses, right? And this, I think, is absolutely underappreciated because it's so easy to just write off Neptune and go, oh yeah, it's a generational planet, right? And it's in one sign for a really long time. It could be 12 years or 14 years or, it varies a little bit. But yes, you share your Neptune placement, as in what sign it's in, with a whole generation of people. And in that way, it's important to think about how Neptune is this background, generational, deep, unconscious type of energy. But let's not discount the transiting Neptune as it moves through the house placements of your chart, because that is unique to you, right? Yes, you might share a sign with all these other people. And yes, of course, there's other people having Neptune transit through the same house as you, right? But that's not necessarily shared with your generation, right? That's based off your time of birth because it's your house placements and that comes from your time of birth, not what generation you're in. So I really strongly feel, and this is from my own experience and observing so many other people, the transiting Neptune as it moves through the different houses of your chart, really colors the background experience of an entire era of your life. And once you know about, oh, okay, I've been having Neptune transit through this house for the last 10 years, things start to make sense, right? And it's always a really interesting time in your life when Neptune moves to a different house, right? When it's transiting over the cusp and moving into a different house. And of course, it depends on what house system you're using, what resonates and how large your houses are. Some people can have really small houses in some systems and some people can have really big houses in some systems. So just depending on what's resonating with you and what you're going with, you can have longer transits in one, Neptune transiting one house for a longer time or a shorter time, but every time it changes houses, that's a huge shift in your life, right? Huge shift in your life, because Neptune is representing the background energy of what are you submerging into? What is taking up unconscious space in your life? What are you what are you immersing yourself into? How are you being submerged? And this can really, it can explain so much about your life. It really, 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 really can, especially if you're looking at your life going why have I been in this weird vibe for so many years? And how come I can't seem to shift out of it? And how come this other person is in this totally different life emphasis, right? How come they're exploring these entirely different life themes, and maybe you want to get there but you can't? It's you gotta find out, where has Neptune been sitting in your transit chart for this whole time. And if you don't know how to check your transits, if you've never done that before, just go to astro.com, plug in your info, pull up your birth chart, and then you can just hit the button that says show transits. And that way, then all the transiting planets will pop up and you'll be able to see where Neptune is sitting, right? So couple other things. For the people who are new here, let me just emphasize that yes, my interpretations of astrological energies are very idiosyncratic. They're not necessarily going to align with the normal stuff that you read on the internet or from books or that you get from the traditional professional astrologers, because although I'm aware of a lot of that information, I've largely thrown it out the window because I personally channel the planets. And, that is a deep spiritual experience that I have for myself. And Neptune is one of the three main planets that comes through for me very, very strongly. So I always feel her as a very, very feminine energy. And it's I know this name, Neptune, right? That's the god of the sea, right? And it's this energy of this king that's never really I know that there's probably some relevance there, and that's going to resonate with some people, right? So it's not to discount that or say that that is wrong. I just have to say that, you know, when Neptune like comes through for me, when I can feel her energy, she is like so feminine to the point where I would almost want to rename the planet Neptuna, right? Neptuna. This deep, like Piscean divine mother energy. Very feminine. Like I can't emphasize that enough, right? The femininity of like the waters, like the ocean and the waters of the birth, right? And the void and the deep unconscious and the flow and surrender and sometimes sacrifice, but also spiritual transcendence. It's very complex energy. So I definitely see Neptune is very feminine. What else? Before I get into the... Oh, one little quick announcement, guys. I am now running an accelerated evolution container. You can find more information in the links down below. This is a monthly subscription service. So you get 2 videos a month, one on the full moon, one on the new moon. These are deep energy work activations and transmissions where we'll be working on shifting our consciousness and stabilizing while accelerating, right? Stabilizing and accelerating our shifts in consciousness so that we can get on with things, so to speak, right? To get on with the evolution of our consciousness. So it starts at just $8 a month. Check it out down below. Okay, so Neptune transiting the first house. Neptune transiting the first house. This puts you in this, and and really guys, for you guys, unless you're watching this when you're like a small child, which I'm assuming you're not, you guys have recently had Neptune transit your 12th house, which is seriously significant. So you're going to also want to watch the end of this video when I get to the 12th house. I almost think I should start with the 12th house, but whatever. I've already started with the first house, so let's go there. So you guys have had Neptune transit over your ascendant, over the horizon, and you've risen up out of the murk and the darkness and the depths and the just all of that 12th house stuff, which I will get to at the end of the video. And now now it's time to remember who you are, to reclaim all of your own energy and to start dreaming of yourself. To start dreaming of yourself and dreaming of your own body. This could be massively healing, especially for those of you who had a really difficult time with Neptune in the 12th, right? You could be having, like if you had health challenges, if you had losses, if you like struggled with mental health or addiction, this is when it gets into the first house. This is when you're going to start to reclaim yourself. You're literally reforming yourself from the murk, from the muck, right? And interesting, for some people, if your Neptune in the 12th was deeply spiritual, and I hope it was, because if your Neptune in the 12th experience was not deeply spiritual, then it was probably horrible. So you could even find yourself like moving away from spirituality, finding that you're more interested in, you know, instead of sitting in meditation or going really deep into all this esoteric spiritual stuff, you could just find yourself wanting to live your life, get back into exercising, get back into physical embodiment, getting back into the body, right? This is back into the body and finding the spiritual connection to your body. And really, this is so much about reclaiming the self, reclaiming your body, getting yourself organized, right? You could be rediscovering who you really are, rediscovering your own identity. And so much of this is reclaiming yourself from the diffusion and the illusion of the 12th house. Not everything is bad about the 12th house, right? And I'm going to talk about that at the end, but enough of it is very thick and confusing that finally when this comes back into the first house, it's like, yes, the return to the self, right? The return to the self, sorting out your body issues, sorting out your identity issues, and just really, this is a massive conclusion and new beginning to an entire soul cycle, right? An entire soul cycle. This is like, for some of you, it could feel like you finally paid off all of your karma, right? If you think about your spiritual journey in terms of karma and karmic relationships and all that, right? Then Neptune in the first house could feel like, oh, you finally like sorted out your karma and now this is your new beginning. You could almost feel karma free, right? Like you've had this big reset. It can also feel like you have journeyed all the way through to being like this old, ancient soul, this worn down, exhausted, but also transcendent and wise, old soul. And now suddenly it's like, oh, I feel brand new. I almost feel like a brand new soul. I feel like I'm being rebirthed and reborn. And that all of that wisdom that you attained by having Neptune transit all the way around. I mean, it's not that Neptune's orbit is 165 years, right? So we only have Neptune transit about half our chart. But anyway, having Neptune cross over into your first house, this is a rebirth, right? And all of that wisdom that you've been accumulating through your most recent soul cycle, it's all in there, right? It's in there, but now it's in your deep unconscious, and you don't need to carry it around with you. So a brand new beginning, a fantastic time to begin again, right? Begin again. And for those of you that had losses, right? The 12th house, Neptune in the 12th house, you could have experienced a lot of just loss and grief. This is when you're picking yourself up and moving on from that. Remembering that your life is worth living simply because you're alive. And your life is worth living just for your own self. And it doesn't matter what you have. It doesn't matter what happened in the past. Just be alive right now and find your vitality and your vibrancy in your own body. And so you could find yourself pulling away from a lot of stuff because this is the time when you are dreaming yourself up, right? And it's all about you, and that's how it should be. So really, really good stuff, actually, to have Neptune transiting the first house after you have survived the Neptune transit to your 12th house. Okay, Neptune in the second house. This one might feel a little bit boring because this is all about stabilizing, right? Stabilizing your life, finding that stability. And of course, if you're coming out of Neptune in the first, this is when you might be finally feeling like, okay, I've been building myself up. I've been working on myself. Now I'm kind of ready to put down some roots. I'm kind of ready to maybe go back to work. I'm finally feeling ready to take on more of like career responsibility. I feel like you're starting to feel like you're crystallizing and like you're getting more connected with your physical reality, and like things are starting to stabilize and get grounded, right? It's this grounding. It can be a little tedious, right? Because the second house, this is Taurus energy. And there is this emphasis on like work and money. So some of you you might find yourself going, I want to create financial stability and material stability. You could find yourself wanting to, it's like, okay, before if you were running around being like a flaky artist, a starving artist type of thing, or just, feeling like, money wasn't that important because you were just working on yourself. And that's a totally great place to be, right? But when Neptune comes into the 12th house, you start dreaming of having that security and that stability, and you find yourself slowly, right through the course of this transit, being able to build that up for yourself and to create, financial security. You might actually find yourself working a job that's kind of boring. I mean, it doesn't have to be, right? Depending on what else you got going on and what you're into, right? This could be building up a really significant career for yourself. It could be writing a book and becoming a published author. It could be something big, right? It absolutely could be. But it could also just be working a job that's kind of boring, but maybe it's a steady paycheck and you're like, okay, this is good, right? If I just go to work, then I can have a comfortable and secure place to live, and I can pay all my bills, and I can just kind of get this foundation built. So it's this really significant time of building a foundation for yourself. Building this foundation for yourself. And really, I don't like to boil down second house energy, because I actually have a stellium in the second house, right? My quintuple Capricorn stellium is in the second house. So I often feel like that's a little bit of a beef I have, right? And I have Neptune in the second house actually in my natal chart, right? So often the second house gets kind of written off as this like boring, earthly, grounded energy, but it absolutely doesn't have to be that way, right? Sometimes people say like second house people are like not spiritual and they're just really ho-hum and boring, and like it's not it, right? That's not the whole story. So Neptune in the second house brings in spirituality into the physical world. And you could find yourself really starting to see, it's like grounding your spirituality into physical reality and starting to see like, oh, wait, like if you watch a lot of my content, guys, you know that I always say, the physical world is, it's like a lot of the time we see the physical and the spiritual world as at odds, and we can feel like this, the physical world, like we need to escape it in order to get back to the spiritual world, and that the physical world is some kind of like some kind of hell, some kind of prison, some kind of really hard school. Really, what if it's none of those things? Or what if it is those things, but that's not really the whole picture, right? What if it is the physical manifestation of spirit itself, like in physical form? And what if you start to see the physical world as exactly as deeply spiritual as the invisible world, as the non-physical world? So there's that whole dimension to it. And then there's this third dimension to the second house I want to emphasize here. It's that it also represents your inner, it can be your inner baggage. It can feel like inner baggage, right? The inner luggage that you've been like lugging around, but it's also your inner strengths, okay? Your inner strengths. And I really see like one of the more esoteric aspects to the second house is it can represent what you brought with you from before you were born, right? What you brought with you into this body, what you brought with you into this body. If you notice in birth charts, people with no placements in the second house, they tend to have this like inner openness, like, and I mean that in a good way. It's like this, I could say inner emptiness, but that sounds bad, but they have this inner openness and this feeling of they came into their bodies with like freshness and with openness and with not a lot of like inner baggage, not a lot of stuff was brought into the body with them. And I mean that like that can be a really good thing, right? My husband's like that, so I mean that in a good way. But people with lots of emphasis on the second house, it can be this feeling of you packed a bunch of stuff inside of you into your soul because you carried it within you. This is how I imagine it, okay? You're coming down into your body, right? You're a soul, you're out there, and you're spiraling down into the earth and then into your body. How do you bring anything with you from the beyond, right? How do you bring anything with you? You can't hang on to things. You can't like take a backpack. The only way to bring anything with you when you're incarnating is to carry it inside of your own soul, carry it inside of your own consciousness. And so this can be like past life baggage, it can be karma, it can be a bunch of trauma from past lives, but it can also be your inner gifts, right? Your inner gifts. And you can pack your consciousness densely and pack all of this stuff into your consciousness and bring it into your body. And that can be represented by the second house. So I know I'm getting a little bit off track here, but I think this is important. I feel passionately about this stuff, so I have to share it. This is the time to let it out. And with Neptune transiting the second house, you can be feeling like your inner gifts are bubbling up from deep inside, and it can start on a really subliminal, unconscious type of level. And I mean, inner gifts, I do say that rather openly, right? It's like, what does that mean? Yes, that can be your inner strength. Yes, that can be like soul gifts, as in, different spiritual, like, psychic, intuitive, healing type of gifts. But it's also just remembering who you are out there, who you are before you are born, and bringing that into your body in this very Neptunian, intuitive type of way. So the second house, there's a lot more going on here than just the physical building, stability, work thing. It's like that is the physical reflection of your inner strength, of your inner work, of what you carry inside of you. So Neptune transiting the second house, you can really start exploring all of that. All right, before we do number 3, I need to have a drink. Okay, Neptune transiting the third house. This is fun and busy. It can also be stressful. Okay, I had this when it actually worked really well for me, right? I had this happening for me when I was in high school and then in college. And so that's a pretty good example, right? Of course, you could have this happen any time later in life, but that busyness, that mental busyness, because, okay, third house, right? You're thinking communication, right? You're thinking verbal communication, and you're thinking paperwork, you're thinking mental busyness, you're thinking, and it can be this like moving around, right? This would be a really good time in your life to be living in a city that you love to live in, because it can be such a good time to explore like the grittiness and the reality of an urban environment. And it could be a really good time to be going to school. So even if you're having this transit when you're 60, why not go back to school? Because it's this emphasis on verbal communication. Of course, these days it could really easily play out in terms of the internet, right? Like learning and thinking and reading and writing and communicating and getting on social media and like blogging and just da 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 da. And so I say this can be really fun because there can be this element of just like wanting to get in touch with the human reality, wanting to move and groove and communicate, even if you're really introverted, right? Even if you're really introverted. So you might find yourself, if you're a super introvert, and I bet a lot of people watching these videos are really big introverts like myself, right? But this can even get you out into the world, right? Maybe that's just online. Maybe it's even through a video game, playing WoW or something where you're actually like communicating with people. But it can even get you out of the house because it makes you want to explore your immediate environment. Like it can be like, okay, you get up in the morning, you go to a coffee shop to get your coffee, you get on the subway and you commute to work, and then you work and you're probably talking all day, or maybe doing paperwork all day, and you're doing all that work type of stuff, and then you get off of work and maybe you stop somewhere for lunch, and then you kind of go across town, you stop at the mall, you do some shopping, and then you're texting people along the way and you go home and you get home and someone says, hey, you want to come out? And you're like, oh, not really. But at the same time, you feel this kind of compulsion to get back out into the world. So you kind of go out and you talk to people and then you come home, right? It's just this. So it can feel kind of mundane like that, but it really keeps you moving, grooving, going, talking, communicating, work. It can be quite busy, and so that's the thing. It can be quite stressful, right? Because you can feel like this pressure to do. If you know any people with like a heavy emphasis on their third house in their natal charts, you might notice that sometimes it's like, why don't you just stop? Because they're very busy, right? And they're good at being busy and they're very productive and they can be very successful people, right? But sometimes it's like, you can see they get overwhelmed with their own busyness, and it can be like, why don't you stop? But they don't know what that means, right? What does stopping even means? How do you just stop? So you can get overwhelmed with busyness, and you can sometimes, with Neptune, it can feel like it can get overwhelming, like almost like it can be like crushing you. Right? You can feel this like pressure because you're being submersed in this. And if the Gemini type of third house, Mercury type of energy isn't naturally comfortable for you, this could be very stressful. And you could end up, just kind of embroiled in different social or paperwork type of stuff, right? But overall, I would say this can be, as long as the third house energy is comfortable enough for you, this could be very fun and really kind of gets you connected with the human reality. And, you could even do a degree in communications or something like that, because there could be a big emphasis on learning about rhetoric, really understanding how people actually think, how people actually communicate. And you could think about the dynamics of an urban environment and like city planning, all that kind of stuff. And you could also emphasis on travel, but you might feel locked into your local environment. This isn't necessarily going to be like long distance travel, like travel to the other side of the world. That would be more ninth house transit, right? Third house is moving and grooving around your local environment. So you might not leave, your home province, your home state, like whatever your region is, right? Your home region. You might not get to leave that very much or very easily, but you might move around a lot in your local landscape. And then things slow down when Neptune hits the fourth house. So Neptune in the fourth house, transiting the fourth house, right? This is where I have been for the last 10 years or so. And this is your relationship to Cancer energy, that fourth house energy, to the home, to being a homebody, to being a mother or a parent, is really going to change how you experience this, right? Because So you've been moving and grooving and you've been busy, blah, 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 and you've been thinking and communicating. The Neptune transits over your nadir, right? Your IC, the very bottom of your chart. Huge shift. So Neptune just finished a whole quadrant and now it's in the bottom right quadrant. Big deal, right? For me, that was when my entire life changed. I mean, there was other stuff going on, but this is a big deal. Your life is going to shift dramatically. And the easiest, most simple, most representative example here is essentially what happened to me. I got married, started a home, started a family, and became like wife and mother. I mean, I've not given birth to children, but I became mom to my stepson, and then I got a bunch of pets, and I went from being this like single urban moving and grooving third house type of Neptune person to now doing the home and family thing, doing the wife and mother thing. Of course, it's not going to play out like this for everybody, but this is the example, right? This is the archetype, and you're gonna see this playing out in some way. So relate it to how you experience it, right? But big emphasis on the home. And really, guys, like I have hardly left the house in the last 10 years. I am like not kidding, right? Like I walk my dog, I go get groceries. My husband and I go on a date once a week. Beyond, but I work from home, right? I work remotely, and my business I run from home, right? So I've been at home doing the family thing, doing the wife and mother thing, and being mom to my pets and all of this. And it is this huge emphasis on being this homebody. And I struggled with that honestly quite a bit at first, but then I came to really enjoy it, to just and it was really important to me to like build a nice home, right? And this got so much easier for me when I dedicated myself to making my home the environment that is my ideal. So that is really what some of the higher frequencies of this, right? Like some people won't struggle with this because some people love the Cancer energy. And if you wanted to become a parent and like settle down and start a family in the suburbs and like really have that experience and do that deeply, then this is going to be great for you. Like you're going to love this, right? But it can be a shock, right? Because you were just in the third house space, and then the fourth house is like totally different. It is the settling down into the home. And for me, it got really good when I got we moved into a much nicer place, and I just made my home the way I wanted it to be, right? And I started to feel like, why would I even want to leave the house, right? Why would I want to leave the house? It's so nice here. This is the best, right? It's like, I don't want to, like for a long time, it was like, why even bother traveling? Because the hotel bed is not as comfy as my bed, right? Why go out for coffee? Because at home I can have my coffee exactly how I want it. And, I got my pets at home, and I got my family at home, and everything is just good and nice, and I have, colorful lights everywhere, and I just created the home that make me feel cozy and warm and just want to just kind of be there, right? So it really depends on how much you want that kind of thing, right? And if you've got a challenge to your Cancer energy or your fourth house, like I have Cancer, Chiron in Cancer, right? So for me, this was a kind of a big challenge. But if you're a Cancer sun or a Cancer moon, maybe you really like this, right? Maybe this would be really good. And of course, it doesn't have to involve like family, and it doesn't have to involve children, but you might find yourself like mothering your pet, right? Or maybe fathering or parenting in some way, like other people, right? Taking on that kind of parental role. And really it's about retreating into your inner sanctum, into your inner space, because the home is basically the reflection of your own inner space. And it's a huge withdrawing of your energy from the outer world, right? You might find that your career goes into the toilet. You might find that you don't care about your career anymore, right? You thought you did, and now you just don't, because it's the opposite of the 10th house career, right? Really, I mean, this could even be retirement for some people, right? Because the second house and then the third house, you were working and, busy, and then Neptune in the fourth could signal retirement for some. So it could easily be homemaking or retiring, right? Or just retreating into your own inner space. This is like a huge amount of, on the spiritual level, this is a huge amount of inner work and inner healing to your inner sanctum, right? To your inner sanctum. It can be very emotional, especially, especially if you're like me and you had this transit while Neptune was in Pisces, right? Because that's water sign, water house, water, 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 big emotional inner landscape. So you could be going really deep within, pulling your energy back from everything that is external and just focusing on the inner space. And this is the, you can really see this actually as the culmination of all of the work you've been doing before, right? First house, second house, third house. You were finding yourself, you were building your foundation, you were busy interacting with the world, and now it all crystallizes inside of yourself and inside of your home. And then we move into Neptune in the 5th, which I am so excited about this, guys. Neptune for me right now is sitting on my 5th house cusp, and that was really part of what made me inspired to make this video and helped me really understand how significant the Neptune transit is, because I can feel this bubbling up. And you know, it takes a couple of years for Neptune to shift. Very slow moving, does big retrogrades every year. So when Neptune is sitting on a cusp for you, it'll take a couple of years. It'll kind of go and fade and go and fade and go and fade. But eventually it'll get there. So when Neptune moves into your 5th house, this is it's like you're coming back alive again after that 4th house, right? You're re-entering the world. Your energy that you were keeping inside of yourself. And of course, with the 4th house, there can be a big emphasis on nurturing others, right? You know, being the parental figure, doing that type of thing. The 5th house, reclaiming that energy and kind of going, oh yeah, like I don't need to just be in this watery, home-based, inner type of nurturing type of world. Reclaiming your fire, reclaiming your passion, reclaiming your creativity. So I do have a bit of a bias here, right? Because for me, that moving into the 5th house is showing up in terms of like my creative ability, like coming back, right? After Neptune being in the 4th house for so long, and I was really focused on nurturing others, right? Nurturing my family, and taking care of myself too, right? Like giving myself the inner space that I needed and all of that. But it was like this like nurture type of thing that doesn't really come naturally to me, to be honest, right? But the 5th house, this is like coming back alive and getting back into creative endeavors, right? Creativity is only one aspect of this, but I do feel that the high chance for most people to like get back into like creative passions, if it's like picking back up some type of art you used to do, just feeling more vibrant in the way you express yourself, right? Suddenly dressing differently, like maybe, you know, wearing makeup for the first time in a long time, maybe wearing more flamboyant clothes. This is about your creative self-expression, right? Creative self-expression. Really learning to unleash that and let it out. And for some people, there might be a whole healing experience about this. If your creativity has been stifled, or if you kind of lost it somewhere along the way, or if you just never really been able to, felt like you wanted to be creative, but couldn't ever really like let it out, this is when you can really let this out. And it's going to be a whole long process of exploring your creative passion and expressing your essence to the world. And really, actually, think of the 5th house as, you know, it's that Leo energy, it's your character, it's your vitality, it's your essence. And Neptune, this is like connecting those two things, right? Your unconscious, your deep spiritual unconscious, Neptune, and your almost more ego-based character, personality, and essence. Finding those to harmonize, right? Harmonizing those two things. Getting in alignment, getting your ego and your unconscious in alignment and using them to express your creativity. That's going to be, that's the thing of the 5th house. So also with the 5th house, I see this less, honestly. So there's, tripping over my words. If you look up 5th house on the internet, you find a lot about love affairs and romance and children, right? This is why I say my interpretation is pretty idiosyncratic, because I don't really see that a lot. Like, that's not what I see when people have transits or placements to the 5th house. I mean, yes, so this thing about romance, it's not like it's 7th house, right? So we're not talking 7th house romance. We're talking more like passion, right? The 5th house is this passionate place. So the 5th house is more to be about not necessarily finding the love of your nut life, not necessarily finding, you know, a marriage, right? Although you totally can, right? Because you've got other things going on than just this one thing, right? It's more about passionate love affairs. This is about having flings, about exploring your sexuality. But again, it's not like it's Scorpio, it's not like it's 8th house, but there is this element of unleashing your sexual passion, right? To some extent. And like whatever that means for you, and exploring that on some level. But that doesn't, again, this is kind of hit and miss because it doesn't need to play out that way, because you could also use your sexual energy creatively. So, but for some people, there could definitely be an element of, you know, maybe you'll have an affair, maybe you'll, like, you know, in the negative sense of the word, or maybe you'll just date a lot, maybe you'll just explore that aspect of your life more, right? And as for children, I really see the children thing being more about the 4th house, but let me kind of differentiate this a little bit. 4th house children, that is about, you know, you parenting, right? And you having these children and like taking care of them. And of course, it doesn't need to be your own personal children. Certainly does not need to be like biological children. It can just be, you know, your plants and your animals even, or just people who become your children. That's all the 4th house stuff, right? Children, the way people talk about it in the 5th house, I think it's like the fruit of your creative loins, right? And I think the way people emphasize, like the way people connect children to the 5th house, I think this is actually kind of dated from, I mean, you know, it's at least several decades out of date, back when, you know, for so many thousands of years, the main creative outlet for humanity was to have children, right? Especially for women, you would give birth to children, and that was your creative contribution to the world, right? That was literally creating life and giving it out to the world. But I feel like this is changing, right? So I think that's why there's this emphasis on the 5th house equals children, because that is creative output. But now children is more about, it's your family thing and it's a parental thing, right? And the 5th house is more about, how do you have that, like your brainchild or like your creative child? What do you produce into the world? What do you give birth to in this world creatively? So yes, that could be giving birth to children, but honestly, I see people having babies and becoming parents and stuff, that's always way more connected to the 4th house. The 5th house is more, I mean, you might acquire like a bunch of nieces and nephews or something. You might have children around you because it can be this playful, like vibrant, creative type of energy. But more it's about the creative child, right? The brainchild. That's how I tend to see the 5th house connection to children, right? What are you giving birth to? And can you nurture your creative projects? Can you nurture your creativity and yourself and your own essence and your character and your personality and your self-expression? Can you nurture these things the way you would nurture your children, right? So Neptune in the 5th, it's this big creative milieu. Also I want to emphasize an emphasis on like playing, okay? On just playing and having fun. And that'll manifest however that is for you, right? For some people it's playing video games. For some people it's getting lost in books, if that's how you entertain yourself, right? For others it can be just going out into the world and finding fun things to do. It can be sports. It can be just partying and having a good time, right? Making yourself feel alive. So there is this emphasis of play and doing what your inner child would find fun, right? Moving into the 6th house, Neptune transiting the 6th house. This is one of those things that the 6th house transits like this, they sound like they're going to be boring, but once you're actually in it, it has this effect of going like, oh, this is actually really nice, and this is what I wanted. At least that's how, hopefully for most people. Of course, if you have some kind of challenge going on to your Virgo or 6th house energy, then you're probably going to go through a several years process of not liking this and having to adjust to it. But most people will probably like this, right? So 6th house, this is things chilling out, right? Because you just had that Neptune in the 5th transit where you were more explosive, you were more exploratory, you were more passionate. In the 6th house, it's kind of like, oh, I'm kind of tired. I kind of need to gather myself. I kind of just need to get back to basics. Maybe I have some healing to do. I need to get my life together. I need to get organized. I need to get everything sorted out. So this can be settling down a little bit, right? It's like getting your shit together, okay? Neptune in the 6th, this is getting your shit together, and it can become what's the word I'm looking for? It can become kind of closed off, right? You can start to feel kind of closed off, and you can find that your perspective just narrows right down to your daily reality. And you could find yourself really trying to heal through different daily routines, through different like alternative medicine. Maybe you might get into like herbal medicine or homeopathy, like, and feeling that like the routine will somehow heal you. I mean, because it really can, right? I'm not having any 6th house transits right now, so it's not the headspace that I'm in, right? The narrowing of your vision, right? The narrowing of your vision. I would actually say Neptune is kind of uncomfortable in the 6th house, but you could find yourself dreaming of maybe creating a home, right? Of having a predictable routine, of retreating from the world so that you could heal. And kind of getting everything in order, right? This might be when you write your will, or when you get your finances in order, right? Or when you honestly really finally figure out that niggling health problem. Maybe you've had health problems that you've just ignored for a long time, right? And you might find that one weird trick that finally fixes your problem. So, maybe you've had like pain in your back for a really long time and you've always just kind of ignored it. Then with Neptune in the 6th, you might finally go, this is like intolerable, I need to figure this out. And you might find that all you had to do was stretch and strengthen certain muscles in your body, and now your back pain is gone, right? And really this emphasis on just figuring it all out, getting it sorted out, coming down to earth, getting all your ducks in a row. And this all feels rather boring, right? And for some people, it might feel like you're being trapped, and it might feel like you are being forced to focus on these minutiae and these mundane things that you don't like and that are boring. If you can just get past that a little bit and start to see how this is really benefiting you, right? How this is healing you, how this is putting you back together, how everything is calming down and quieting down so that you can live the life that you want, right? So that you can live the life that you want. And as long as this isn't happening like at the very end of your life, this is setting you up for a lot of good things happening in your 7th house. So let's blend this in, moving into the 7th house, right? Neptune moving into the 7th house. You might, like, a really, like, kind of easy example here is Neptune in the 6th. I can easily imagine somebody who has been like sorting their life out, right? Maybe somebody who was like a partier, a wild child, and maybe totally broke, and just finally kind of just settling down, getting their life together, getting a job, sorting out their health, and becoming really who they were meant to be, right? Neptune in the 6th, you could finally become who you were really meant to be. And then Neptune moves into the 7th house, and now what can happen for you? Well, now things can really start happening for you, right? Because you could find the love of your life. You could get married, right? You could get married, Neptune transiting the 7th. You could find your best friend forever, right? Your BFF. You could... The 7th house, people say business partnership. It doesn't necessarily have to be that, you partner with somebody to run a business. You could run a business by yourself. The 7th house could mean that your business finally takes off, or that you start a business, because business, that can be your partnership between you and your clients, right? So all of that work you did, getting your shit together with Neptune in the 6th, sets you up for the success and getting what you desire in life, and the expansion in your life in the 7th house. Neptune in the 7th house, I mean, for a lot of people, this will be a romantic thing, right? The 7th house, like, let's not discount how that partnership, right? That partnership that you've always wanted, right? And it can definitely lead to, marriage, or you don't have to be legally married, right? But you know what I mean. One sec. That was really funny. I accidentally, inadvertently paused the camera at exactly 44 minutes. So, that master number 44. So anyway, 7th house, Neptune in the 7th house. Here's the thing though. If you have a challenge to your 7th house energy, this could mean for you a lot of challenges and a lot of life lessons and learning around partnership and love and romance. Especially if this is happening for you when Neptune is in Pisces, there can be this element of not seeing your partners clearly. This isn't for everybody, and this isn't always, but this is something that can happen, especially if like your seventh house energy is in Pisces and it's challenged in some way. You can end up getting into like delusional relationships and like not seeing your partners clearly, and it can be very difficult and confusing, right? But of course, not necessarily. It could also be this magical, fantastical, beautiful, I just met my soulmate, I just met the love of my life in this magical, insane series of synchronicities, and like we ran off and got married like immediately, right? So it can be this, it could go either way, guys. It could be really magical and fantastical and unbelievably amazing, or it can be confusing and difficult and challenging. But I think, of course, remember this transit goes on for many, many years. So by the time you get through it, you will have learned what you needed to learn about relationships and interacting with others. So of course, it doesn't need to be about love and marriage. It doesn't have to be about romantic partnership, although that just is really emphasized here. It is also just how you are one-on-one, your one-on-one relationships with people. That includes friends. That includes, really, like I mentioned, like business person and client, right? So really, there could be a big thing here about business stuff, right? Business stuff. Especially if anyone is thinking back to when Neptune was in Capricorn. If you had Neptune in Capricorn, if you have Capricorn in the 7th house and you were alive when Neptune was transiting through Capricorn, this could have been like a big business move for you, right? You could have just been the business person and going to a lot of meetings and working with clients and really building up your business. The 7th house has this business emphasis to it because business involves one-on-one relationships with clients. So what else do I want to say here? Neptune transiting the 7th, there is some potential here for emphasis on the other. And so whether this is, your partner, or whether it's your clients, or whether it's just your friends, right? People you have one-on-one connections with, there's a potential here for it to become overwrought. You could a little bit kind of lose yourself here, especially if you already have that kind of tendency, right? If you know that you've struggled being a people pleaser, if you know you struggle in giving your energy away, if you know you struggle in, focusing on the other instead of yourself to your own self-detriment, right? This could be a challenging period of losing yourself into the other and focusing too much on the other. And I think, but by the end of this transit, you will have learned that you have to reclaim your own energy, right? And when you start moving into the 8th house, by the time Neptune gets towards the 8th house, you're going to be realizing like, wow, I just gave myself entirely over to this other person or to these other people. But again, right, you see me going back and forth on this one? It's that Libra energy of the 7th house. You're trying to balance something out, right? This Neptune transit in the 7th house is trying to get you to balance out the self and the other, balance out the self and the other. So if you go too far into the other, drawing back into the self, even if this is really beautiful and amazing and wonderful for you, even if you met the love of your life and you just spent 10 years in honeymoon mode and your whole life revolved around your relationship with this other person, by the end of this, when Neptune is getting towards the 8th house, you might wake up and go, okay, wow, I still totally love this person. This past 10 years were a fantastic period of my life. I'm so glad I made my life revolve around my relationship. This was really wonderful and amazing. You could start to kind of go, but like, there's gotta, what else is happening in the world, right? What else is happening in life? What else is happening in my life? And wanting to kind of pull yourself back just a little bit. And you find yourself getting more and more interested in different things, right? In different things. So it can really go either way. Neptune in the 7th, how much you enjoy or appreciate the immersion in relationships, right? The immersion in relationships, and being careful not to go too far with that, especially if that is an uncomfortable energy for you. So Neptune moving into the 8th house. This, guys, this is very interesting. Okay, so the 8th house, sex, sexuality, the occult, spooky spirituality, right? Spooky spirituality, and mental health. That's how I see it. Traditionally, there's this emphasis on like debt and inheritance and that type of stuff. That is true. I don't really see that as being the most interesting thing or the most relevant. I'm not going to focus on it. The way I'm going to focus this is, especially for like you guys, right? The kind of people who would be likely to watch my video and resonate with it. Neptune transiting the 8th. This is going to be very spiritual, and it's going to be an emphasis on the spooky spirituality. And I call it that. Like that's really what I call it, the spooky spiritual, because this is like Halloween stuff, right? So Neptune transiting through your 8th house, this is a massive spiritual awakening. Even if you have already been a very spiritual person, you're going to start getting more into weird esoteric stuff. And so often I get these emails or these messages where people go, I don't know what's happening. I think I'm losing my mind. I think I'm going insane. Like, I'm seeing things, I'm hearing things, I'm feeling creepy, weird energy around me. I'm having nightmares. I'm having nightmares of being attacked by astral parasites. I think I'm full of astral parasites. I feel completely disconnected. I don't know what's happening. I'm seeing ghosts. I'm seeing aliens. I think I'm an alien. I am an alien. All of these really weird, like, this is like fringe spirituality at its most extreme, right? The fringe of the fringe of the fringe of the fringe. This is where I live, guys. This is, I got my Gemini moon in the 8th house. So fringe spirituality, right? Spooky spirituality. And it can be scary, right? People have 8th house transits. Things can be scary. You could have to face a fear of death. You could think you're dying, right? You could finally release and free yourself from a fear of death. So many, there's more to the 8th house than this, but that's where I want to focus this. For the purposes of this video, I want to focus on the spooky spirituality. So yeah, your third eye is opening up, and suddenly you are more aware to subtle energies, and you're starting to become aware of, all of these things that are happening in dimensions, phases of consciousness just outside of our own. And that can be really fucking terrifying, right? You might find yourself, especially if you're alone at night, you could have really freaky things going on, and even things that, even if you never believed in that kind of stuff before, suddenly you will believe because you are experiencing it. All kinds of strange and wacky and wonderful, mystical, spooky experiences. And this is going to be, it's going to be like this is actually what I call the fear phase of awakening, right? When you're being initiated through all of this stuff, and it can be really freaky and scary at first. When you're in the fear phase of awakening, guys, just know that it's an aspect of your 8th house transit, and it's part of you learning about all of these things. You're being initiated into this space. And especially for those of you who don't have any 8th house or Scorpio placements, or if that's not really emphasized for you, this is going to be even weirder and even scarier because it's going to be new, right? It's going to be new to you. Those of you with, Scorpio and 8th house stuff going on, you're going to be a little bit more comfortable, but it can be quite scary. And, people, when this is happening, they might feel for a little bit like they're losing their minds because, when I had it wasn't Neptune, but I had an 8th house transit, and that's when I had my starseed awakening, right? When I started to remember having past lives on other planets. And before that, guys, I was an atheist. So that is how much an 8th house transit, and with Neptune transiting the 8th, this is serious, okay? This is serious. crazy deep esoteric spiritual awakening where, something like that could happen to you. You could go from being an atheist to believing that you have an eternal soul and that your soul has incarnated on different planets, right? It could be something like that, where it's just like, are you serious? Am I completely losing my mind? Am I going absolutely insane? That kind of stuff. And the weird things that could be happening to you, either like physically or energetically, right? All very strange. So if you're in the fear phase of awakening because of your Neptune in the 8th house transit, really the thing that I recommend the most is, yes, okay, so you're going to be learning about psychic self-protection and psychic self-defense. You're going to be learning how to manage your own energy and how to protect yourself from the various things. And so there's all kinds of different things you might like to do in order to explore psychic self-protection and self-defense and all of that kind of stuff. But honestly, guys, especially if you're home alone at night in the dark and you're hearing things that are going bump in the night, right? Things are bumping in the night and you're freaked out and you're having nightmares. Maybe you're having nightmares of being abducted by aliens. Maybe you're having nightmares of being chased by, really scary entities. Maybe you keep getting attacked by parasites in your dreams. All of these things. Distract yourself, right? Distract yourself by something very, very grounded. Because what's happening is your third eye and your crown chakra is opening up wide, and your third eye is opening up way up wide, and you're tuning into all of these mystical energies. You got to get grounded, okay? You got to do things that are super, super grounded. And really, the thing that I think helps the most is find a TV show, preferably like an old sitcom, right? Like something, maybe there's one that just makes you feel really comfortable. Maybe it's a sitcom that your parents used to watch when you were a kid, and it feels super grounded. It's really mundane. It's really kind of boring, and maybe it's kind of lame. That just makes you feel comfortable, right? Maybe you're even watching a kid's show. You could watch a kid's show. You could watch Barney, or a sitcom that just seems so lowbrow or so cheesy and so corny and so lame, but it's like, wow, this is the most mundane, this is the most plain, boring, grounded thing I could possibly watch. It makes me feel safe, makes me feel grounded, makes me feel normal. Find something like that and just watch that. I'm not even kidding, right? Because your instinct is going to be to find all these spiritual ways to deal with these new spiritual stuff, but that actually just takes you more and more out of your body, right? They might actually recommend to you to do grounding meditation. I mean, grounding meditation is fantastic. I highly recommend it. But if you're in the fear phase of awakening, meditating, if you're really freaked out, right? Meditating can just take you out of your body even more, right? The grounding meditation isn't necessarily going to be grounding. It can just take you more out of your body. So you really have to find out, is meditating help you? Is it helping you calm down? Is it helping you feel grounded? Is it helping you feel centered? Or is it just projecting you out into the cosmos and you're just popping out of your body and traveling star systems and all this crazy stuff is happening, right? If that's what's happening and it's freaking you out and you feel too on edge and you need to dial it back, get really grounded, eat a pizza, and watch a really stupid TV show. I'm not even kidding. Sleep on the couch and watch the TV show while you sleep, right? Just let that play. Surround yourself with boring, normal, cheesy, lame, grounded things. That is what you need. That is your medicine to counteract the spooky spirituality. So hopefully, because Neptune is going to be in your 8th house for many years, it's not going to stay like this forever, right? Because you are going to be mastering the 8th house. You're going to become the master of this. So this is a multiple years long spiritual awakening. So it might start off spooky and strange and weird, but you're going to get comfortable in that space. You're going to eventually realize, oh, I don't even need to protect myself psychically speaking, because my light, my radiance, I just radiate my light out into the world. And that is what protects me from everything, right? Unleashing your light. You don't need to create these. You can create shields and you can do things to protect yourself. All those things are great, but at the end of the day, they're unnecessary, because if you just let your light shine as bright as possible, then nothing can get you and nobody can come at you, because they would be blinded if they look at you, or even if they can look at you. It's like looking at the sun, right? And what would happen if you tried to get close to the sun? Well, you would go blind and then you would just burn up, right? So unleashing your light is the only thing that you need to do in order to stay safe in this space, right? That's what you're going to ultimately learn. And with this, you could explore all types of different esoteric spiritual traditions, right? You could get into Kabbalah, you could get into witchcraft, you could get into basically any spiritual or religious tradition. You could cycle through them all. You could start a spiritual business. You could like deeply awaken and unleash your different psychic gifts. And you basically just get super weird, right? You get super weird, super woo-woo, and you go more and more fringe, into the fringe of the fringe of the fringe of spirituality, to the point where like people who think that they're on the fringe, you look at them and go, you almost feel alienated because you're so much more fringe than the fringe people, and you start to feel like like you're the most fringe person that you can even find, right? So this transit can be a little bit isolating. Hopefully you can find yourself at least some content on the internet, maybe some people to chat with on the internet. If you're really lucky, maybe one or two people in your physical life that you can talk to about this stuff, because it's like the invisible, the unseen, the mysterious, the mystical, and the spiritual is going to become a huge focus of your life. And of course, this can be playing out in terms of like mental health or drug addictions or like sexual exploration. Hopefully this is going to be consensual sexual exploration. You could get into BDSM. You could explore that in all kinds of different ways. You could have different types of sexual encounters. There is a potential here, if this is a really challenged energy for you to have the kind of sexual encounters that you don't want. But hopefully that will be a very small minority of people, right? Don't worry about that if that's like, not a theme in your life, right? That's like for people who have taken on that type of wound and challenge, and in order to transmute it in their life. So that is a specific subset of people. That's not just going to happen to people just because you have Neptune transiting your 8th house, right? So, and there could be something going on with debt and inheritance, but really I just wanted to focus this on the spooky spirituality because that is the stuff that is the least talked about. And that is the stuff that I am the most passionate about because of my 8th house Gemini moon. That's what I know about, right? So, moving right along, Neptune transiting the 9th house. This is what that is, okay? This is so good. It's just like the lights come on, the sun is shining. This is like, in cartoons where they have the god beams, like the sunshine just like beams down and everything is suddenly full of light and the angels are singing and the birds are flying. This is like that. Things are just opening up wide, and this is going to feel so good. I would say Neptune, very comfortable in the 9th house because that's that Sagittarius energy. It's mutable energy, it's expansive energy, and this is going to bring out the best of Neptune, okay? This is really going to bring out the best of your Neptune, of the transiting Neptune, right? This could be, it's just opening you wide on every level. So this could be higher learning, right? You could get a PhD. You could write a really groundbreaking book. You could become a movie star. You could travel the world, right? You could travel the world. You could receive higher spiritual insight that no one else understands. Like you could have a mystical experience or a download that is different from the 8th house, because it will feel like it's just so expansive, so full of light, and you could get this inspiration, this divine inspiration, this understanding of the bigger picture. And it could even come down to, you could be downloading a whole type of system that you want to share with the world, right? This is rising above everything. This is rising up like a hot air balloon, okay? But in terms of this like mystical experience that is like possible to have here, you could feel like a prophet, essentially, right? You could feel like a prophet, and you could be seeing the future. You could be seeing into other dimensions in this very like divinely inspired type of way. So there is a little bit of a potential here for this to like go too crazy, right? This is where Have you ever come across like an unhoused person who is like babbling about God, right? And you look at their eyes and their eyes are like all glassed over, right? And some people might say, oh, they're just lost on drugs. I mean, they might be on drugs, but they might not be. They might be, they might be having a spiritual transcendent experience that has essentially like blown their mind, right? To the point where it's like taken over everything. And I mean, this might not be a bad experience for the person having it, right? But it's like if the person having this experience if their vessel is not clear, right? If their vessel is not clear, like if they have negative attachments, if they have unresolved like baggage and karma and ancestral stuff, then this is going to distort, right? This is going to distort, and you could get this is where people could get involved in a cult, or they could start a cult, or they could get in its worst, this could be like doomsday prophecy. So I don't want to focus on any of this stuff, right? But I just wanted to mention that, it's not like this is all good. There is a risk here of things going like too far, too much, too fast, and getting distorted, but not really like a big worry, right? For the most part, this is like elevating you and going higher and higher and higher in terms of your spiritual transcendence and your learning and your travel. And this is a time where you can really lift yourself out of your life situation, right? You could get rich. You could, free yourself from whatever you were doing, especially if your 8th house transit was difficult. You could finally feel like, oh, now I'm just free as a bird to live the life of my dreams, and just getting lifted up. For those who are verbally inclined, really, you could write a book here. Like if you're having a 9th house, Neptune in the 9th house, and you've always felt like you should be a writer, or you feel like you have this book inside of you, or maybe it's a film, or maybe it's a painting, right? If you have this inside of you, do it. Do it. Let it out, right? Let it out. Because this is where, this is another firehouse. You could really be unleashing your creative potential, but here there's going to be a big emphasis either on spirituality or on, that's the thing, the 9th house energy, it's like spirituality, transcendent spirituality, higher spirituality, or higher learning, or travel. It's because it's a mutable house, right? So it can really iterate on these different ways. So for some people, traveling the world. For some people, higher education, higher learning, and higher intellectual experiences, like really being an intellectual, being like the best intellectual, or really the spiritual transcendence. So, and you might find yourself getting involved in a spiritual organization. That could be a religion. It could also just be getting involved in different kind of spiritual systems, right? Because with the 8th house, things were rather nebulous, right? Things were kind of strange and spooky and very experiential. In the 9th house, you might find yourself wanting to teach these things. You could become a teacher. You could become a spiritual teacher. You could become a guru, right? However that plays out for you. So, and there will be this desire to kind of reach your highest potential and then pass it on, right? To teach. And moving into the 10th house, Neptune in the 10th, this is when this is really going to start making sense for you. So for those of you that spent a lot of time with Neptune in the 10th, exploring and transcending and kind of coming into the understanding of your own wisdom, the 10th house, this is when you're really going to want to do something with it. You're going to want to turn this into a career, right? This is when you could create one of those spiritual businesses that is like really huge and really impactful. The kind of, there are channelers or gurus and mystics and psychics and mediums and just spiritual teachers, spiritual influencers who like fill stadiums, you could be one of those people. You could, because this is also the energy of like, the cable TV, like Christian evangelical, like TV preacher guy. It's also that kind of energy, but of course it doesn't have to be like that, right? It doesn't have to be like that, but you could want to take your spirituality and your career and blend them together. Of course, Neptune in the 10th house, it doesn't have to be a spiritual thing. It doesn't have to be. What you often see with Neptune transiting the 10th house is people submerging themselves into their career. Their career can become their whole life, okay? Their career can become their whole life. This could be someone who for 12 years, goes to work for, 14 hours a day and comes home. And maybe they have a family, but maybe they don't see their family that much. Maybe they feel like their role in the family is to be the provider and that their career allows them to be that provider. Maybe they literally don't have a family. Maybe they sleep under their desk at work, right? This could be your career taking over. And that could feel fantastic, right? That could be exactly what you want, and that can feel like, yes, I feel like I am creating an impact in the world. I feel like I'm building up myself and building up my life, and I'm flexing my power. Maybe you're the boss, maybe you're the CEO, maybe you just are making a lot of money and everything feels good. Maybe you are showing people who you really are. Maybe there's this, like, I could easily see people here, going to different types of like fancy events, right? Like, black tie type of things, different types of banquets, maybe award shows, maybe like, even like your local city council, like participating in that, different types of like, well, it could be like hobnobbing, like hobnobbing going on here, like mingling with people, that type of thing. But you can find that your career can take over and can take over your life. And for some people, this will be not fun, right? For some people, they won't enjoy this, and it could be a big challenge. You could find yourself being, if this is a challenging thing for you, right? It could be you are forced, you can feel a little bit like you are trapped in your career. And again, you might go back and forth with this of liking it and seeing how you're making money and how you're creating a legacy for your family, creating like legacy wealth even. And you can feel like, okay, I'm getting acknowledged, I'm getting prestige, I feel like I am a valuable member of the community, I feel like people are recognizing me in this like professional way. And you might like that, you might not, right? And the longer this goes on, you might start to feel that it depends how you like it, right? You might love this the whole way through, or you might start to feel like you've lost yourself in your career, right? And that you've sacrificed your family for your career, or that you've sacrificed yourself for your career. And you could start to feel like you need to get yourself back, right? Get yourself back. And interestingly, as Neptune moves into the 11th house, it's expanding even beyond that. What's a good example? How can I give an example of this? Like, okay, maybe imagine Neptune was transiting your 10th house and your career was you started a restaurant. You're a restaurant owner, and all of that entails, right? Your restaurant is very successful, and you've made a bunch of money, and now you're known in your community as this important business figure. But Neptune moving into the 11th house, you could suddenly like start franchising. Things start iterating out in a web, right? Iterating out in a web. Or maybe you worked at one company for a long time and you built yourself a very strong foundation there, and then something happens and you become a freelancer. And so instead of just working for one company, you start working for all of these different companies and you start networking like on your own, right? It's this feeling of things starting to replicate, things starting to ripple out, things starting to more about the web, right? More about the network. Neptune in the 11th house can really be really very, very nice because it can bring you a lot of support from your community. It can bring you like a feeling of interconnectedness with your like friends and with your community and with the universe in general, right? Feeling like you are supported and networked, and you might find that support and like blessings just come through for you. You might find that you're suddenly like maybe you had started to feel like even though you were successful, you were hitting a glass ceiling. This can be you breaking through that glass ceiling and finding out that there's even greater horizons, right? Really just going more and more and more. And it's about like rippling out, right? It's less about going higher and more about finding the network, right? The network, that Aquarian energy of the social network and the network of consciousness, right? There is a little bit of a potential here for this to be suffocating, right? You could feel like, if this is a challenging energy for you, right? If 11th house and Aquarius energy is challenging for you, you can feel like the collective or the network is vampirizing on you, like they're taking advantage of you or that they're oppressing you in some way. And you might actually feel a lot of guilt about this because you could feel like, wow, I'm making all of this money, or I have all of this popularity, or I know all of these people, and like really these things are good for me and I should appreciate them. But sometimes it can feel like nobody really sees you. That's the weird thing, right? You might see, like, even though everyone is seeing you, maybe literally everybody is seeing you, but are they really seeing you? There could be a little bit of a loss of self here. And you can see that's actually kind of the theme through Neptune in this entire quadrant, 10th, 11th, and 12th, the upper left quadrant. You can feel like you're losing yourself, but you can also feel like you don't necessarily have a right to complain because maybe things on the surface seem to be going really well for you, right? You have popularity, people know you, you receive validation and acceptance, and you have everything that you need, and you're really basically very well supported. But what about you, right? What have you sacrificed? Has it been a sacrifice, right? What have you sacrificed? And you might feel that this is boiling under the surface, but you never quite are able to express it to anyone. And it can be this feeling of lonely at the top. This is for the 10th and the 11th house, right? Lonely at the top, lonely at the top. And really feeling like no one is going to take you seriously if you shared your struggles of loneliness, or if you started to say that no one really sees me for who I really am, that people would just say, oh, you just got first world problems, look at you, everything's going well for you, but what about you, right? So that's going to be your primary struggle, right? Is what about you, and what have you had to sacrifice to get to where you are? Neptune in the 12th house, this is where all of this comes to a head, right? If you've really been experiencing that, what about you? And by the time Neptune gets into the 12th house, it can feel like something's gotta give, right? You can be feeling exhausted, you can be feeling fatigued, you can be feeling like something has to change because I can't go on like this, right? I have built up this huge career, I have built up this presence, I had built up this community, and now you might not realize this at first, right? Maybe some of you do, depending on how in tune you are with your own inner cycles, right? You might understand, like, this is starting to wear me down. I can't support this anymore. Things maybe feel like they got out of control, like too much of it, too big. You can't keep up with it. You can't support it. Others of you, you might not be aware of this feeling, and you might just have things start to fall apart, right? It could be, okay, guys, really funny. So I think the last thing I said was things could start to fall apart, and that was when my camera suddenly turned off because apparently I haven't emptied the trash on my phone in a while, and I literally ran out of space, and the recording had to stop. So that is the most synchronistic example ever. That is exactly what I'm talking about here. Like, exactly, right? Neptune's in the 12th house. Suddenly, all of this stuff you've accumulated, there's too much of it, you have no more space for it, you have no more energy, and you can't continue, and something's gotta give, right? Phone is out of storage, it was full of stuff, camera turned off. Exactly that. So, there's like two ways for this to go, right? Neptune in the 12th house, this is the massive ending. Of course, this is the house of new beginnings, but in order for things to begin anew, something has to end, right? Many things have to end. So, hopefully, this is what I hope for everyone having a Neptune in Pisces transit, that you will be very spiritually aware. This will be a deep period of spiritual awakening, where spirituality becomes your entire life, your entire existence. And like, why am I saying, like, I would never say that someone needs to be spiritual. I'd never say you should be spiritual. But when you're having Neptune or like any really major transit to the 12th house, if you don't get spiritual, it's going to be terrible. Okay? It's like that is your way through this, right? That is your way through this. And if people can't find their way to their own personal spirituality, whatever that is, then this is just going to be really so much more of a struggle, right? Your spirituality for the Neptune in the 12th house transit is what is going to save you, so to speak, right? It's going to make this easier on you. So hopefully you're very spiritual and you start to realize this. Okay, I built up all of this stuff and it's time for me to divest, right? Maybe it's time to pass on the company to the next generation, right? Maybe it's time to retire. Or, if you're younger when this is happening, you could just be like, I'm living the wrong life. I need to do something entirely different. This is when you could go briefcase to backpack, right? You could quit your corporate job and get a backpack and go bum around Southeast Asia for 5 years, right? and just go on like a spiritual journey. It's that type of thing. So definitely a potential here for this to be very exciting, very beautiful, and this like unfolding of your spiritual journey. But more often than not, it's rather shocking to people and they don't see it coming. So for those people, this could be where life happens to you in order to tear things down, right? In order to tear things down. You could have sudden health problems and like very significant health problems, right? You could have mental health problems. You could definitely have losses, right? You could lose those that you love, either through a divorce or a breakup or, through physical death. There could be like any type of like really significant ending, like a significant and, permanent. Nothing is really permanent, but, permanent for the human life, very significant and permanent ending. And that, like I was saying, it could be the economy could crash and that could make your multi-million-dollar business. It could make that, overnight, you could lose all of your money. You could lose all of your money in a stock market crash. All of those type of things, there could be something happening in your physical environment that suddenly, living where you are, it's not viable anymore and you could be forced to move. Anything like that creates this huge change that is likely to happen for you. And this could be like the hardest years of your life, right? It could really be the most traumatic, most difficult, most shocking, most sorrowful and sorrow-filled years of your life. But again, it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way. It's not always going to play out that way. And even if it is, right, you might find that these experiences, like if you have the death of a loved one, that could bring you your spiritual awakening, right? And because like your desire to connect with them could even lead you to become a medium, right? You could start having mediumship contact with your passed on loved ones, stuff like that. If you're having a health crisis, that could lead you, like working on the healing of your body can lead you to the healing of your soul, right? And whatever it is that you lose, of course, the human mind, you're looking at all of the things that are ending and closing off. And, you could panic and thinking that everything is just being taken from you. You got to give yourself a few years to understand this, okay? You got to give yourself a few years to see where this is all going. Because remember, Neptune will eventually cross over your ascendant and into your first house, and that will be your brand new rebirth. So what you're doing here with Neptune in the 12th house is you are shedding your skin in the most profound way possible. You are letting all of this stuff go, and there could be all kinds of weirdness and upheavals and just churning and struggle as you like free yourself from all of this dead skin, freeing yourself from all of this weight. And yeah, it could lead you to the black pit of despair, right? It could lead you to profound grieving. It could lead you to just profound shock. It could lead you to... Oh, that was my cat knocking on the door. I was like, there's no one home. What's going on? It could lead you through very deep, mystical, spiritual experiences. And ultimately, you could transcend all of this. So with this transit, you really want to be tuning into whatever you believe is the highest possible iteration of consciousness, right? Source consciousness, unity consciousness. You want to see everything from the highest perspective possible. And that's what you're going to be learning about in this transit. The highest possible perspective. Take everything up to that ultimate bird's eye view, however you understand that. And that is where things will start to make sense. That is why I say if you don't get spiritual with this transit, it's just going to chew you up and spit you out. And I mean, that's still okay. You'll still make it through. Neptune will still come over to your first house and you will begin your life all over again. But it's gonna make a lot more sense, and you're gonna be able to comfort yourself and find comfort and find understanding and find wisdom and find potentially a lot like massive healing and consciousness expansion if you can see all of this through a spiritual light. And that takes us all the way back around to the first house, which is where everything begins again and begins brand new. And there we have it. Neptune transiting through all of the houses. I'm ready to be done talking. I did this all in one take. So sending you guys so much love and light. I got a bunch of links down below. Check me out. Talk to you later. Bye.